and welcome to another exciting episode of the Comic Book Chronicles.
Yay! Yay!
Okay, that was like 5 seconds longer than I needed, but thank you.
I'm boosting the audio until I figure out what changed itself in my audio settings. So
fair enough. Coming to you live from the Bridge of the Enterprise, it is I, Roddykat, your host. You can find me at Roddykat on Twitter at Roddykat. Guess what? You can also find me at News Does Need on Twitter. You can also find me at CBCaps on Instagram.
Carolina.
Ching. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ka-ching. Ka-ching.
You know what? I'm not doing all that. And with me tonight, providing the sound effects, by hand.
Hey, Dougie Fresh style.
Exactly, because he can do that. Is one Brooklyn born, one Brooklyn raised. Well, actually, I don't even know if you're Brooklyn born, but that's okay. It doesn't matter.
Yes, just like MCA said.
Exactly. There you go. So one Brooklyn born, Brooklyn raised, Agent_70 on Twitter and Instagram.
What's up, everybody?
No! Sleep till Brooklyn!
There you go. I'm working on the sound. In the background, so I might just pop sound effect in there just to experiment. If our recording ends up being littered with sound effects louder than what we hear, sorry about that.
Yeah, it'll be fine. We got this. It'll be fine. But tonight, folks, what we do not have, or who we do not have, is one PCN_Dirt on Twitter. Also, Pop Culture Net on Twitter, popculturenetwork.com, and his umbrella sites therein. Also, the Vine Alternative Byte, BYTE, under Comic Reviews, no vowels.
Ka-ching!
There you go, yeah. And also, not with us tonight, is the Osiris of this ish. One, Tim DOGG98 on Twitter. CB Cron on Twitter. Excuse me. If you did not catch that, CB Cron on Twitter. The Click Nation on Twitter. That's DKLIQNATION. TheClickNation.com. And Comic Book Resources, where he's over there writing his face off.
Ka-ching!
You can find this here podcast on the Cold Slither Podcast Network, CSPN.US.
Do it today. Ka-ching!
You can also find us at your podcast perusal place of choice, whether it be Google Play, Apple iTunes, Spotify, and the Cold Slither Podcast SoundCloud page.
Ka-ching!
Exactly. And if I didn't say, I'm pretty sure I didn't. As you can see, Agent 70 is coming from the stylish deep bunkers of the SHIELD headquarters here tonight.
We are all taking advantage of everyone jumping on the Zoom train and putting in virtual backgrounds.
Yeah, because we're using Skype, as you can see in the corners, and that's just everybody's like, we could do this too. We need to get on some of that, and we might be more secure.
That is the truth. Except
Skype's not necessarily all that much, but we don't need to get into that because that's a little techie.
Exactly.
That's for another podcast. We are going to talk about first of all, we're going to talk about the news like we sometimes tend to do, but matter of fact, I'll just go ahead and say that now. We're just going to get into the news and we'll talk about the subject when we get to it.
Absolutely.
So we'll start out like we normally to do at this time with the cinematic news.
The cinematic news.
Love it.
Hey man, I can hear it. It's just that I don't know if anyone else can. So
we can hear it a little bit. Yeah, I can hear it a little low, but no. But it is what
it's one of those weeks, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, we working through it. We're gonna be all right. Marvel movies: Thor 4, Doctor Strange 2, and more receive new release dates. So that's the thing that is happening. I think we've talked about some of this already, but just in case you were under a rock or something, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse sequel will come out on well, I should say tentatively at this point because they could very well change it. October 7th, 2022, Spider-Man Far From Home sequel on November 5th, 2021. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness on March 25th, 2022, and Thor: Love and Thunder on February 11th, 2022. And they also go into Tom Holland's Uncharted movie and some other stuff that's gotten delayed, but we don't need to worry about that.
Right.
Next
up, James Gunn, the director of all of the Guardians of the Galaxy's movies, again, was doing a Volume 2 watch party on social media. And while there, a Twitter user asked if Mantis would be able to reinstate Gamora's memories, spoiler alert for Infinity War and Endgame, in the next Guardians of the Galaxy installment. And he said that Mantis won't be able to do that. And that would be a terrible thing, I think, plot-wise for them to do. I think they should jump right into this, different Mantis and a different Gamora and see what happens.
Right. And as you may or may not see from what we're talking about, the event that we're going to talk about later, you might see a parallel in the changes, let's just say.
Exactly.
But yeah, and I don't recall that ever being actually a part of Mantis's power set. Like she definitely is an empath, and she definitely, has some other low level telepathic abilities.
Right. And I was about to say that's a pretty tough nut to crack for most telepaths, right. Talking about Charles Xavier and whatnot. That's not something that is simple to do, like literally put memories into someone that never actually experienced them.
Exactly, because the version of the version of Gamora at the end of that movie is basically a one that wouldn't have those memories yet because it's the past one,
right.
And while Mantis has been in the picture for a relative different time, there's still a whole big gap that she wouldn't be able to do even if she could.
Right.
So it is what it is on that one. But we'll see what they plan to do when 3 comes out. Infinity War, the real reason Thor speaks Groot. So apparently, James Gunn also was saying, I'm assuming during the same watch party, that Thor was making a joke, as he's prone to do, when he said Groot was an elective on Asgard. The Guardians of the Galaxy director said, when asked about the matter on Twitter, he says, being a guard of sorts, he doesn't have the same high bar for understanding Groot as the Guardians do, which basically he's also in a related tweet. It was brought up the fact that Peter Quill couldn't understand Groot and even though he's using a translator,
right,
and that is because, well, somebody said despite wearing a universal translator, but Gunn said that he doesn't have a universal translator. He just has a translator, and it doesn't have all of the languages. And he reminds folks that he didn't have Sicarian in the first film, for example,
right,
and that people don't learn Groot through knowing the language; they learn through connecting with Groot.
Okay,
which makes sense. Well, I guess which makes some sense the way they did it anyway, and I guess it makes sense in general. So yeah, that was all that from that. Next up.
All right, there is a new poster that is a blast from the past for the upcoming Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 7. It channels classic painted 1980s movie posters in the style of Drew Struzan. The poster shows the team assembled and ready to go back to 1931 to save S.H.I.E.L.D. from a new threat before the clandestine agency is even founded. In addition to the 1930s imagery, an alien spacecraft and rocket in the midst of takeoff are both seen in the background. Pretty cool.
So here's the thing about that, quote unquote. That looks like a Quinjet, the MCU Quinjet. I could be wrong, and it might be modified, but that's what the alien spaceship looks like, and the rocket taking off looks like the Fantastic Four spaceship.
Okay, interesting.
Now I'm not saying that's what it is, but if you look at the picture, it does seem similar to from that. So yeah, there you go. I need to catch up on that. Falcon and Winter Soldier's Sebastian Stan says Bucky has no shield envy. So yeah, Sebastian Stans was explaining to the Hollywood Reporter that he viewed Steve's action as granting his old friend a life, much like the ex-Sentinel of Liberty had done for himself. Quote unquote. Steve is saying to Bucky, "You're going to go and do that too," meaning get a life, I guess. I'm not going to put this thing on you. We're both going to live our lives, the lives that were actually taken from us back in the 40s when we enlisted. So that's where Sebastian Stan says. So that's where I felt they were at the end of the movie. I didn't think there was a desire or any conflicted thoughts about taking on that mantle. Sam, to me, was always the clear man to take on the mantle for numerous reasons, which also comes with so much more baggage that's going to be explored in the show. I guess you'll have to tune in to Disney Plus to find out why, unquote. So
okay,
and then he goes on to say, like at the end of Endgame, for either Steve or Bucky is not really about the shield, which seems to play out.
Yeah. That's pretty much how it played out.
Next up.
All right. A potential Spider-Man spin-off featuring Marvel's characters Silver Sable and Black Cat may find new life as a limited television series on Disney Plus. During an interview with The Hollywood Reporter celebrating the 20th anniversary of Love and Basketball, director Gina Prince Bithwood was asked about the current status of Silver and Black. The project, first announced in 2017, was shelved in August 2018. So that would be interesting because when did Sony decide to play that nicely with Disney? With some of the other Spidey characters.
Right, but I thought this was under Fox. No, it wouldn't, because it was going on. See, that's the weird thing about this. Because first I was thinking about this, like, wait, this is under Fox, and then I was like, wait, no, it's not, because it's under Spidey stuff, which is under Sony. So I don't know. That's really strange, unless because of the fact that Disney and Marvel still has television. No, because Sony was doing all the Spider-Man animated stuff too.
No. Whatchamacallit? You might be right on that account. It might be the television thing, but we'll see.
Yeah, like that's some of that stuff is kind of weird.
Right.
So, I guess at some point that'll be popped out. Yeah, it even says in this article, it's like Silver and Black was a Sony Pictures product. So, weird. So I guess that was her just speculating. Anyway, Ewan McGregor almost played Silver Surfer back in the 90s.
Hello there.
I have the high ground, Galactus. Oh, oh god, we're probably, you know what? Before I even go into this article, given the number of bad movies of Marvel properties back then, I'm looking at you, Captain America and Fantastic Four. Granted that Captain America was well before, but Fantastic Four and that whatever that Avengers one was almost, it's probably just as well. But back in the 1990s, long before the MCU used the screen rights to Marvel's, many characters were dealt out to various studios. Several movies in development that never got made at the time, and several that eventually did, aka Blade, X-Men, Spider-Man. One realized Marvel movie from the 1990s was 20th Century Fox's Silver Surfer, which was to be directed by Aussie filmmaker Jeffrey Wright, 1992 Stomper, and as far as I know, not the same Jeffrey Wright, the actor.
Right.
Now, a storyboard artist who worked on the project has revealed some of the artwork from the film and revealed two actors that were reportedly up for the lead roles. One of them being Ewan McGregor, and the other one was Steve Burkhoff as Galactus. And this was on Twitter. I don't know who that last person was.
All right. Well, as Obi-Wan would say memorably, don't try it. So.
Burkhoff was a veteran stage and screen actor and playwright who played the villain in Octopussy, Rambo: First Blood Part 2, and Beverly Hills Cops. Okay. I do know that dude now. Yes.
You were the chosen one!
If I'm not mistaken, Victor Maitland.
Oh, Victor Maitland!
If that is the same guy, if I'm not, yeah. So,
that's funny.
Yeah. Next up.
All right. As shared by The Hollywood Reporter, the Rogue One prequel series starring Cassian Andor has cast 2 new actresses, Genevieve O'Reilly and Denise Guff. O'Reilly will be reprising her role as Mon Mothma, a role she played in the Star Wars universe for a while, appearing in Rogue One, as well as lending her voice to Star Wars Rebels. Guff, another Irish actress whose most prominent role for most American nerds might be voicing Yennefer in Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt, has been cast in an unknown role. Okay.
Nice. Cool. Well, we'll see what happens when that actually gets off. As a matter of fact, you know what? I'm going to ask you to take these next 3.
Okay. Because Roddykat is not up to date on his last season of Clone Wars watching, so might as well just turn off audio for this and let me babble. So, that incredible Clone Wars fight is even better when it's synced up with Revenge of the Sith. So Clone Wars' Endgame has inextricably entangled itself in the events of the Star Wars prequel trilogy's own Endgame in a way that makes for some truly incredible drama and lightsaber fights. You can watch the original Darth Maul help bring Clone Wars' most incredible lightsaber duel to life. It's so awesome because it was actually partially mocap.
And which is the next article.
Right. So in a new Clone Wars clip, Rex and Ahsoka just jam that knife right into your chest. So just to finish up with the mocap stuff, though.
Oh wait.
What's that?
Oh, shoot! I had that article in there, and I think it got disappeared somehow. About
the mocap. The one with the YouTube clip?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, I could talk about it. It's okay. You can.
Actually, no, I do have it. Yeah, watch the original Darth Maul. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I didn't open it. I just figured that's what it was.
Yeah.
So ultimately, if you go on StarWars.com has it, Star Wars Twitter has it. I think even the Star Wars Instagram has it. It's a video clip that was produced by Star Wars to go behind the scenes of the lightsaber fight in the most recent episode of Clone Wars. And it shows that Ray Park was invited back to do mocap lightsaber fighting for Darth Maul in the cartoon, which is super cool. And they got the same stunt woman that does the armorer in The Mandalorian to do the stunts for Ahsoka, and it just comes out super. Like, I noticed the quality of the lightsaber fighting when I watched it. I even tweeted it out. The next thing I know, like a day later, I see, or a few days later, I see the tweet. I see the tweet that shows this clip that Star Wars produced, and of course, there's a reason why it looked and felt so good for an animated lightsaber battle. So please, everyone check that out. And please get up to date on Clone Wars.
I feel attacked. But yes, if you're watching the video, you can see a clip of a side by side from it that was from the article. And last but not least, on that part, anyway.
Oh, in a new Clone Wars clip, Rex and Ahsoka just jam that knife right into your chest. This is really spoilery stuff because this is for the episode that's going to come out. This is being recorded Thursday, April 30th, so there is a May 1st episode and a May 4th episode. Specifically, they're going to forego waiting a full week to have the release of the episode coincide with May 4th, obviously for May the 4th be with you. So, people, you have only a little bit of time left to get caught up on Clone Wars before everything is spoiled the hell out for you. So, you are duly warned, Roddykat.
Indeed. And as we force push that to the side, Supergirl photos welcome back a DC hero, aka Miss Martian. When Supergirl returns with an all-new episode on May 3rd, it will bring the return of a DC hero who hasn't been seen since season 2. A new batch of photos from Deus Lex Machina reveals that Megan Moores, aka Miss Martian, Sharon Leal, will be appearing in the episode. Yay! Megan made her first appearance in season 2 of Supergirl, working at a bar for alien refugees. Over the course of the second season, she and John Jones, David Harwood, uh, fell for each other. Boy, did they. And he was crushed when she left. I remember that. So, yeah, so apparently she will be coming back. And the episode would also show how Lex Luthor, John Cryer, which, man, Ducky's playing Lex Luthor. What's going on? Rose to power during the aftermath of the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover. And by the way, hey, go back to our last episode or last 2 episodes and check out the comic book version of us talking about that said event.
Exactly.
This episode also marks the directorial debut of Melissa Benoist, aka Supergirl. So cool. Next up.
All right. Though she started off as a minor villain on The Flash, fan favorite Arrowverse character Laurel Lance / Black Siren. I got something for that. I don't know if you'll hear this, but who? Eventually switched sides on Arrow following a redemption arc that spanned 2 seasons. This arc ultimately saw her take up the Black Canary identity that once belonged to her deceased Earth-1 counterpart, who, according to the character's actor, Katie Cassidy, more stories involving the character may be on their way. Great.
I mean, this is kind of neglecting the fact that, during the first, 4 or 5 seasons of Arrow, that she was actually on the show as Laurel Lance and did actually end up taking up the Black Canary mantle after her sister Sarah died, who came into. Mm-hmm. But that's just sure. She didn't necessarily start off as a minor villain. She did after her character was killed off, and then this multiverse version of her came into the picture. So yeah, in case you weren't watching, which I don't know how many people were. Anyway, Harley Quinn's animated show joins Sci-Fi in May, which that's weird sentence to say. DC Universe's hit animated series Harley Quinn is set to premiere on Sci-Fi next month, with the announcement coming in a recently released trailer. The trailer gives the viewer a look into the world of Harley Quinn, while also introducing her group of friends, including King Shark, Poison Ivy, and Dr. Psycho. Welcome to the Sci-Fi family, Harley Quinn read a recent statement about the series. So, cool. Weird, but cool. I guess it makes sense because isn't Sci-Fi also a Warner Brothers property?
No idea.
Yeah, I don't know. Doesn't matter. Next.
So, Zoe Kravitz, who has been cast as Catwoman in the upcoming Matt Reeves Batman, has joked that she might need a bigger catsuit by the time self-isolation and quarantine are over, and the Batman can resume production, although she credits food, wine, and weed for getting her through quarantine. It's tough to remain in that tip-top shape while you are only able to virtually train with her trainer. She's just being candid about it. It's kind of tough to stay in that kind of shape. Just think of all the professional athletes who can't get to their get through their training regimen. It's very similar.
Right. And her with a few pounds is still kind of fine. So, I mean, being honest. Wonder Woman 1984 director on why the film has 2 villains. So Wonder Woman 1984 director Patty Jenkins shared her reasoning behind including both Barbara Ann Minerva, Cheetah, and Maxwell Lord as villains in the upcoming film. It turns out that the story was the thing that gave birth to the need for both, Jenkins told Total Film. It wasn't that I thought I needed both. Cheetah was the villain that we were focusing on having in this movie, but then Max Lord, throughout the history of Wonder Woman comics, he serves a very mechanical purpose often. So there you go. And this came out today as of they recorded, and I'm sitting here like, it's kind of funny that I said this on Twitter. If you've already seen this, apologize, but it's kind of funny that this necessarily needed an explanation when there are other films, other superhero films specifically, just cram in supervillains for no reason at all.
I was about to say, this is like a Spider-Man 3 thing. That's what everyone's worried about.
Right, but I mean, but this is a little more benign than like say X-Men or Spider-Man or even like the Batman movies. Because like why? What was the need to have like what was the need to have Scarecrow in there for no reason in the Dark Knight movies? Like they could have
Oh, you
just
mean Batman Begins?
yeah, like he showed up in at least one of the other two, so it was like what was even the point? Like they didn't even do anything with him. They could have gave him his own movie. Or any number of times they could have done that in superheroes movies. But that was my point. It's like, okay, just focus on a villain, and get more movies out of it. But then again, they probably would have screwed that up somehow way anyway. This one seems relatively benign. Anyway, next up.
All right. What are we up to? Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Dolly Parton was secretly a producer. Okay, so this is regarding the movie
And the show, actually.
Oh, and the show. Okay, so that's good. It recently came to light that none other than country music star Dolly Parton had a hand in bringing the horror comedy franchise to life. Good.
Yeah, the TLDR is that her production company is one of the ones that were behind the movie, and the movie didn't really do all that good, but also ended up being behind the show and helped produce the episodes of the show. So technically, Tyler Parton, you have Tyler Parton to thank for Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Okay.
Yeah. Next up, Star Trek's Jonathan Frakes wants a cameo on the Orville. Sexton MacFarlane's sci-fi comedy The Orville owes a great deal to Star Trek: The Next Generation. That's not even a light joke. As its characters and concept take a great amount of influence from the beloved Star Trek spinoff. Now, one Next Generation alum has expressed his wish to join the show in an on-screen capacity as opposed to off-screen, who directed an episode. Actor Jonathan Frakes, who portrayed Riker, y'all know this, who has also directed an episode of The Orville and, of course, Star Trek Picard, recently spoke to comicbook.com regarding his desire to appear in the third season of the Seth MacFarlane comedy series. I keep waiting on a phone call, Frakes said. I'm available. I got a beard.
Oh, no.
The actor continued, I would just like to be, just like I hoped and dreamed of being on The Big Bang Theory. There's certain things, the absurdity factor, like the Pez dispensers and the garden gnomes, certain benchmarks we all want to reach. And he also goes on to praise the Orville for MacFarlane and the Orville for the love letter to TNG. So, yay, I guess.
Okay. Next. All right. So next up, oh, wonderful. Watch the stars of Doctor Who spend time together remotely. Who? So in the UK, the BBC and charities Comic Relief and Children in Need hosted a special fundraising event called the Big Night In to raise money for UK healthcare workers currently on the front lines of the country's response to the coronavirus pandemic. So, of course, some doctors of an altogether different sort showed up too. Doctor Who has a long history of association with Comic Relief and Children in Need's charitable efforts, frequently creating special shorts and dropping trailers as part of telethon broadcasts.
Yes.
Okay.
Do not send Daleks to Agent 70's house over the comment he made, please. Thank you very much. Not all of everybody can be a Whovian. Which that actually works out though. Actually, let me see. I think this is. Wait, was this still? Oh, I want to make sure that we are. Oh no, we're still good. Yep. Ignore those. The latest Doctor Who short finds the Doctor in a moment of quiet mercy. So yeah. The long story short is that there is a short that I think is going to end up on Doctor Who's Quarantine channel. I guess that's a YouTube channel. I'm not even sure. Yes, it is. With a story written by Paul Cornell and read by Lauren Wilson. The story is about Lucy Cartwright and takes place after Human Nature and the Family of Blood, 2 episodes from David Tennant's run as the 10th Doctor. They share what ended up happening or what will happen, time, etc., to a member of the family of blood, and it's gorgeous. So yeah. And like I said, it's about Lucy Cartwright, the daughter of the family. If you know those two episodes and what they're talking about here, you can have at that when that comes out, whenever it comes out, if it's not already out at the time of this recording.
Okay.
Next.
All right. So apparently, Universal Pictures, which is in the news, if the next story up is actually going to address what I was just referring to, but Universal Pictures and the Lego Group have sealed an exclusive 5-year deal to develop, produce, and distribute theatrical releases based on its intellectual property and original ideas, Universal announced Thursday. Lego has previously made their movies at Warner Brothers, including the Lego Batman movie. According to Deadline, the original 2 Lego movies, Lego Batman movie and the Lego Ninjago movie, all remain in the Warner Brothers library. So apparently that could include Jurassic Park, Fast and Furious, and Minions.
Yeah. So which means
that could be pretty funny to introduce, that'd be a way to introduce Fast and Furious to the kids that really aren't old enough to watch the movies.
Well, they also have that Spy Racers movie, Spy Racers thing on Netflix.
That's true.
But you're right. But also, this could open the door to potential like Lego Fast and Furious game, or at least being in the video games. Also, I would imagine.
Right.
So, and in addition to being whatever other Lego movie that will come up. So yeah, going on to the story that that Age of 70 just alluded to, AMC Theaters and Regal refuse to play Universal movies once theaters reopen. Cineworld, the parent company of theater chain Regal Entertainment, has joined AMC Theaters in banning Universal movies once cinemas reopen. Quote unquote, today we make it clear again that we will not be showing movies that fail to respect the windows, as it does not make any economic sense for us, Cineworld said in a statement via Variety. And the original story was that, yeah, AMC said that they weren't going to show any Universal pictures since this whole thing happened and when things open back up. So they're already losing proposition, because from what I understand, they're already losing money from one, things going on, two, their movie pass thing not necessarily taking off, and just in general. So I don't know. Now I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, we know some of the bigger franchises like Fast and Furious and whatnot that are and Trolls, because it basically this all stems from the fact that Trolls did well on VOD. Or at least, let me phrase that, came after the fact that it was found out that Trolls did well on VOD. And then AMC happens to come out with this statement, and yeah. There you go. In fact, it says so in that article. So yeah, that's going to be crazy. Next article.
So Universal Studios responds to AMC's theater ban, and they said nanny nanny poo poo, we're making money apparently. No, I'm kidding. But
I wouldn't be surprised if that was an underlying term of whatever they said. But
yeah, I was about to say that's probably the whatchamacallit, the sentiment of the statement, without going through the statement.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a thing. I'm sure somewhere also in the back, Netflix is like, okay, fine. This is rubbing their hands gleefully.
Well, Netflix is not really doing the distribution on this. This is through Amazon. This is through Vudu. This is through Apple.
I'm aware, but that doesn't necessarily say it doesn't open the door for them to take up some of the stuff. Like, hey, Universal, if you want to put your stuff out, some more of your stuff out over here, and
understood.
Hook us up. We got you. Like, and that's not a thing that has actually happened. I'm just saying that's a potential.
Right.
So. But yeah, that's a whole thing, y'all. I'm pretty sure we won't hear the last of that or something similar to that. Joe Russo gives updates on Battle of the Planets, Magic the Gathering, and Grimjack. Two of those I'm slightly excited for. One of those I have no idea. Joe Russo, co-director and producer of Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame with his brother Anthony, recently shared some updates on a few of the highly anticipated projects they currently have in development at AGBO. Or Agbo, I don't know. Speaking with Collider, Steve Weintraub, and an exclusive. Oh, right. They did. Wait, did they do that Extraction movie? That makes total sense.
Yeah, Extraction. Yeah, right. With Chris Hemsworth. They didn't do. I think they just produced it. They didn't, have like the hands-on direction.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well that makes a whole lot more sense. Okay, Russo teased some details about the current status of the live-action adaptation of 1977 animated series Battle of the Planets, aka Science Ninja Team Gatchaman in Japan, and as well as an animated series based on Magic the Gathering for Netflix, and a series adaptation of Grimjack for Amazon. Quote unquote, it's not going to be a direct adaptation of the series, Russo said of Battle of the Planet. It's going to be, it's going to be our own story that we tell surrounding a group of genetically altered kids who are involved in a space war.
That one's just going to be tough to redo. That's the thing. So, I kind of don't blame them for trying to take it in a more original direction, but still telling the right origin story.
I hope. Oh, God, I hope. That could take months of gestating and also trying to figure out what the new mythology is. And then we commit that to a Bible, and then from that Bible we do some artwork as exploration. And once we have artwork that we're inspired by, then we commit to a script. So we're in the Bible phase for Battle of the Planet, which means this ain't coming out no time soon.
Right, it's going to be a while.
Mm-hmm. But if they you know what? We already talked about. We're not even going about that because they're using Battle of the Planets. Denote they're using the Americanized version that has that stupid robot in it, and not the original, not fully.
Sark 7. Yeah. Everybody loved the little robots. It's basically their R2-D2. We know this.
Look, at the time, yeah, it was still annoying, but we dealt with it because that's what we had. But yeah, then we come to find out Science Ninja Team Gatchaman, aka G-Force, was, had a different adaptation that was better and less robot-y. But anyway.
That's true.
So, and by the way, hey, it's out there on DVD and Blu-ray, so you can go check that stuff for yourself. Anyway, next story.
Are we done with cinema?
We are actually done with the cinematic news, so therefore we go into the comic book news.
All right, we can transition.
Tom Baker and Louise Jameson recorded a brand new Doctor Who adventure entirely during lockdown. As you can see, Tom Baker there looking gleefully mad. Guys, wait. Basically, Big Finish, who does a lot of the audio recordings, I think for the Doctor Who and probably other places also. The way Big Finish's audio recordings are usually set up means that the transition to working remotely for the company has not been too much of a problem. It's currently primarily digital release of More Good Adventures in Time and Space than you can shake a particular sonic stick at has continued relatively unabated. But the latest release in the fourth Doctor Adventures line, Rob Valentine's Shadow of the Sun, marks a special occasion. It's the first of the company's audio dramas recorded entirely since its move to remote working when the UK went into government-mandated lockdown orders on March 27th. So cool, yeah. So they basically batted out an audio story, like they've been doing. Set aboard a futuristic luxury liner, Shadow of the Sun sees Baker's fourth Doctor and his companion Leela, Louise Jameson, and K9, yay K9, speaking of good doggos, investigate the strange goings-on of disappearing guests and a navigation course set in to bring the ship and the passengers to an unavoidable doom, which if that doesn't sound familiar to Doctor Who fans, I don't know what is. There's a bit of a problem, though. None of the passengers seem to mind. So, yeah, if you want to go check that out, that should be out there on May 12th for your perusing. Next up.
All right, Doctor Who puts David Tennant, Paul McGann, and Christopher Eccleston in a new kind of time war. So, the BBC has officially unveiled a new transmedia initiative stretching across multiple mediums, including audio, novels, comics, vinyl, digital, immersive theater, escape rooms, and games, called Time Lord Victorious, which will see Paul McGann, David Tennant, and Christopher Eccleston's incarnations of the Doctor united alongside Billie Piper's Rose Tyler to face an unknown threat from the dawn of time itself. Okay.
Yeah, so that would be 10, 8, and 9 for those keeping track. And
bingo!
And the companion for the 9th and the 10th. So yeah, Paul McGann needed more actual stories anyway for the 8th Doctor, who only got a movie, but that's a whole nother story. Yeah, that was the thing. You can go check that out when that comes out. January 2021, I guess. Looks like. Yep. Tank Girl finds a new home with Goons creator Albatross Funny Books. Albatross Funny Books owner Eric Powell has confirmed the comic book character Tank Girl has a new home at his United States-based publisher. The Australian Outlaws tales now the likes of such comics as The Goon, Hillbilly, and Grumble. Sorry, folks. Says Adam Martin and Brett Parsons has been doing some amazing Tank Girl stuff lately, and Brett just did a run of The Goon for us, and I'm a huge fan of his artwork. And they kind of approached me like, hey, we're looking for another home for Tank Girl. Would you be interested? And obviously he said yes. So, cool. Yay for all those Tank Girl fans. Next.
All right, so sci-fi fantasy anthology Heavy Metal is embracing the trend of producing cloth face masks, and it's put out its own face mask bearing the magazine's logo and Tama, the iconic hero of the animated Heavy Metal film. The mask is available through Threadless, who will donate 100% of the proceeds, up to $100,000, to MedShare, a charity which provides personal protective equipment, otherwise known as PPE, to medical professionals fighting the coronavirus pandemic. So there's actually news, I don't know if you have it in here, that Disney is doing the same thing or something similar. No, I don't know if it's the same charity, but they just announced that they're doing like Disney, Marvel, and Star Wars related face masks as well.
Okay.
They're up for order right now.
Okay, cool. It is worth noted that these masks, and probably more likely those Disney ones, are not rated N95.
Yeah, of course not. They're cloth.
Right. They're just basically cloth, and yeah. So that is something you might want to know going into this. So N95 is basically the big joint that keeps a lot of things out. So Anyway, next up. In this exclusive peek at Nnedi Okorafor's remote control, a magical team flexes her terrifying powers. You may know Nnedi Okorafor for her Shuri series. But she's also a Nebula and Hugo Award winner who pens sci-fi and fantasy tales, both YA and young adult readers. And apparently, Gizmodo has an excerpt from her and a summary from her new book, new novella, Remote Control, which is a vivid slice of Okorafor's signature Afrofuturism storytelling, followed by the reveal of a full cover and a thrilling excerpt. So you can see the cover there. I won't go into the excerpt, but it sounds good from what I've read, and you can go check that out in the show notes. Next.
Folio Society recently released a special collector's edition of Pierre Boulle's semi-satirical novel Planet of the Apes, originally La Planète des Singes. Buell's, gosh, what's up with the spelling? Buell's sci-fi story posited a parallel world where apes and monkeys had evolved faster than humans, which forced humanity into a place of servitude by the intellectually and technologically superior apes. So the new edition is filled with beautiful illustrations which portray the planet of the apes in a whole new way.
And if you're watching the video, you can see a couple of shots from said illustrations. Get a glimpse at Star Wars Rebels ships, tech, and shiny lightsabers in this gorgeous art book. So there is the Star Wars Rebels was a stepping stone between the work done and still being done by Clone Wars and the end of the prequels, and bridging the gap to the aesthetics made iconic by the original Star Wars. Rebels had to walk a line between two tonally different worlds by bringing its own flair to the table. And Ion is originally planned to launch early next month, but now rolling out today in a surprise move. This is from the 24th, so yeah. Dan Wallace's The Art of Star Wars Rebels, published by Dark Horse, provides a definitive look back on the concept work and design process that went into making the Lucasfilm animation show come to life. So yeah, you can go check that out if you're a fan of Rebels, or you probably already bought it by now because you knew this was already coming out. Next.
Marvel fans will be able to feast on foods inspired by their favorite characters. Inside Editions, the publisher behind Destiny, the official cookbook, is publishing a Marvel Eat the Universe cookbook. The book is named after the popular YouTube video series hosted by celebrity chef Justin Warner, who also wrote the cookbook.
Interesting. Yeah, recipes include Nova's donuts, of course, chimichangas from Deadpool, and a bunch of other stuff. So you can go check that out whenever. Oh, it's on available pre-order and will go on sale July 28th if you're interested. Wu-Tang is for the kids, for the childrens, but also Wu-Tang Clan's Method Man loves them some Marvel, because he cosplayed as X-Men's Bishop. Yeah, it is long since noted that the various members of the Wu-Tang Clan are comic books, actually also / Marvel fans. Hip-hop artist Method Man, perhaps best known for his work with the influential rap group Wu-Tang Clan, recently suited up as one of Marvel Comics' X-Men, sharing cosplay photos of himself as the futuristic mutant known as Bishop. This was on Instagram, Method Man's Instagram page. And if you're watching the video, you can see his version of Bishop on the video. If you haven't already seen it from his Instagram account, because you know a bunch of y'all have followed him. Next.
Alrighty. Spider vs. Spider-Gwen comes to life as a Hot Toys figure. This particular figure also comes with a Spider Ham. So this is directly influenced by the design of the Spider-Gwen character in the Spider-Verse movie, which means that her hair is shorn a specific way, not necessarily the way that you would see her in the comics, but definitely how you see her in the Spider-Verse movie.
Yeah, and you can see various pictures from that right there. From the Facebook page. God of War artist reveals incredible Batman character designs. So Santa Monica Studios' Raf Grassetti compiles 16 very impressive drawings from Batman the Animated Series in his own style. You could see this stuff on Instagram, because for some strange reason it is not showing on the video. But Grassetti is he basically has worked on God of War and a bunch of other stuff for Sony Santa Monica. So that should give you some of his pedigree right there. He also did some other stuff. We're going to go into it. Next.
All right. So following up on some recent news, Diamond Comics Distributors has begun taking orders for DC products again in anticipation of the resumption of distribution in mid to late May. But according to Diamond, there's still no firm date when actual distribution will resume. So Diamond is still working towards that mid to late May resumption of weekly comic distribution, but numerous factors will affect the actual date we are able to deliver our first weekly shipment, Diamond told Newsarama this past weekend. So this is still a fluid situation, ladies and gentlemen. Please stay on top of social media and comic book news sites and our podcast to stay abreast of when we'll be getting our latest fix of weekly comics. I can add as a footnote that I just got word and just paid off my books that were that I was not able to receive because New York State went into quarantine. So I will be picking them up this weekend. So I will be good through March 25th, because the books on the 25th were already, we were already under lockdown.
Congrats.
So I'll be picking that up over the weekend.
Nice. DC announces more comic releases in May. DC Comics returned to store shelves physically and digitally this week. The publisher is pulling back the curtain for what we'll be seeing on shelves on May 19th and 26th consecutively. It's new comics as well as collections, and will be available physically and digitally. There is a list here that I will not go through, but it is worth noting that both of the dates in question are Tuesdays and not Wednesdays. So,
all right,
there you go.
Jim Lee and 99 more artists draw the Dark Knight for Hero Initiative's Batman 100 project. So this is not the Bink charity stuff that he's doing online for auction, but this is something else for the Hero Initiative.
Yeah. I think this was also going along aside with that Bink stuff, because I think this Batman 100 project was like, I may have started around the same time, if not afterwards, something like that. But so far, yeah, they're doing things. Black Canary's Otto Schmidt art showcases DC Heroes' entire wardrobe. So fishnecks and the black jacket. Artist Otto Schmidt shared his rendering of all of DC hero Black Canary's outfits in one ambitious image on Twitter. Black Canary has worn a multitude of outfits over the years in comics, as pictured in Schmidt's art. Despite minor variations, the bodice, jacket, and boots have largely stayed same over the years. While her legs appear bare in the image, Black Canary usually wears fishnet tights, although these are nearly invisible in Schmidt's piece. Wow. And you can see the piece in the video. The whole lineup of looks like the multiverse of Black Canaries here. But yeah, you should check that out if you're a fan of Black Canary. There you go. Boop, if you haven't already. Archie Comics reveals next wave of 80th anniversary digital exclusives. Today, Archie Comics begins its 80th anniversary celebration with the launch of its previously announced digital exclusive titles. As such, the New York-based publisher has now revealed that comic readers can expect to get their hands on, so to speak, when the upcoming second wave arrives in May. Leading a charge for Archie's second wave of 80th anniversary digital exclusives is Sabrina the Teenage Witch, who will star in a digital issue set for release on May 13th. Also arriving digitally on May 13th is an issue starring the Private Eye known as Sam Hill, as well as an artist spotlight issue celebrating the work of late Archie Comics legend Harry Lucy. So there you go, bunch of stuff from Archie, and happy 80th to you folk. Next up.
All right, Attack on Titan, Parasite, Alita, Fairy Tail, and more manga have been added to the Nintendo Switch app. So this is using Inky Pen, the all-you-can-read comic subscription service on Nintendo Switch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've still yet to check that out, but I hear very little about it. Last but not least, which I probably should have given this one to you, but never mind. Bad Boys franchise gets hilarious comic book treatment. And I don't know why they keep using that word like that, but oh god, use new words, please. Animator Luigi Lacarelli collaborated with Sony Pictures to draw several moments from the Bad Boys film franchise in comic book form. Quote unquote, I had a wonderful opportunity to work with Sony Pictures on these 10 illustrations to celebrate 25 years of Bad Boys. Lucarelli wrote on Twitter, it's such a blast working on these, and I hope I did these iconic moments justice. And you can see some examples of what he did on the Twitters on the video, and you can go check that out on his Twitter page, which I'm sure they're still out there. So cool. And that, folks, is it for the news. We will get into an ad read before we go into our topic.
All right, so as I wait for this to load, our first ad read of the night is for Funko Fun at First Sight, your home for exclusive collectibles such as their world-famous pop vinyl bobbleheads, apparel including t-shirts, hats, and socks, and brand merchandise such as custom DIY pop figures, art books, and skateboards. And now the listeners of the Comic Book Chronicles can enjoy 10% off your entire purchase when shopping at Funko. To place your first order with 10% off and to help keep our show free for you, go to our network website at cspn.us. That's cspn.us. Then click on the Keep Our Podcasts free link at the top of the page. From there, scroll down to the Funko link and place your order. When you get to the checkout, put in the offer code SHOP10 for your 10% off discount. Funko through cspn.us. Do it today. Ka-ching!
And now, folks, we get into the main event. Well, actually, we get into the prologue to the main event because this
we
week,
are definitely in the lead up.
Yes, we are going to be. So we said last week we were going to be talking about the Marvel Comics 19. Oh Lord, what year was this? 2006. Lord, I would think I would have had that. Let's say 2005. I believe it started in 2005. Anyway, the prologue and the miniseries that led up to the events known as in Annihilation. And we got a nice little order going on here, so we're just going to bat them down and out. I don't know if you had anything to say before we get into this.
I just wanted to mention the fact that I had been stressing to Roddykat that he really needed to catch up on reading his Marvel Cosmic and that he should start with this event because it really lays the groundwork for much of Marvel Cosmic as we know it today. We've already done Kree-Skrull War, which came out in the 70s in 1971 and is still reverberating within the Marvel universe until today. And now we have this Annihilation event, which really set the stage for how several characters have come to take center stage in Marvel Comics, in Marvel Space Comics recently. So a lot of the changes to some older characters took place within the pages of this event, and how we see them today essentially came out of this event. So it's a pretty seminal moment in Marvel Comics, and also bear in mind that this was occurring parallel to Civil War, and it definitely had a different feel. It gave another corner of the Marvel universe some shine while Civil War was going on.
Yeah. It is also worth noting before we get into this is that so if you are on Marvel Unlimited, there is one miniseries that is not grouped with the rest of the prologue stuff, or with the rest of the prologue stuff, and the prologue itself is called a core issue, and it kind of is. But nevertheless, we will be talking about it here, and the issue I'm talking about is the lead-off miniseries to the event, well, to this whole shebang, is Drax the Destroyer.
This is an important one because it really sets the stage for the change to the character, because prior to this, Drax the Destroyer was, and they mentioned this in the actual series, a lot taller and a lot dumber, and a lot more evil, during like the Infinity Watch.
Right.
An Infinity Gauntlet, an Infinity War, an Infinity whatever the hell the other Infinity was. I forget what that third one was. God, that was the third one.
Yeah, you got me on that one.
Jeez, I'm gonna look it up now. But anyway, so the change in the character takes place in this mini. And what's funny about it is I had not actually read this mini before, so it was very enlightening to me.
And I have, because I think I'm fairly certain right around the time Guardians of the Galaxy the movie came out, either somewhere before that or somewhere after that made me read this particular limited series miniseries. So there you go. There. In fact, I'm just gonna put this up right there. That is from Marvel Unlimited. Um, as we get into the particulars, and really, we're gonna pretty much just go over the particulars of the whole miniseries, like what kind of the big point, hopefully, of what happened in the series, and not so we can kind of cut down some stuff. But um, and of course, I did not have my notes for that. But nevertheless, it starts off with Drax on a prison ship with him, the lunatic, not the lunatic, the Blood Brothers, and Pybok. They crash land on Earth, and some podunk town in Alaska. And before I go any further, this miniseries also introduces probably one of the most annoying Marvel characters that I don't care that much for, and that's saying something because I don't like Quentin Quire. Anyway, and it is noted here on the synopsis page is Annihilation Day -40. I don't know how that reads, so I might want to stop doing that one until we get to the actual day. So Cammy, the person that I was just talking about, discovers the ship that was wrecked, and oh wait, this is really going through the brief points. So yeah, so Drax comes up. He's the slow dumb one of it, and Pybok and them was talking about how he had drunk some plasma runoff, basically some waste runoff during their travels or whatnot, and that kind of plays into what happens in this transformation later on. They crash land on Earth. Pybok's trying to find a way off, and so are the Blood Brothers and this other lunatic person. They run into this town and try to recruit the townsfolk to do that with using some slave labor. Drax gets into a fight a couple of good times in the course of this, and we find out that he gets smarter. Unlike the Hulk, who gets more stronger, he gets smarter as he fights because of something that happened to him previously before this series. Anyway, during one of the fights, Pybok kills Drax. The girl Cammy says, "Hey, can I have this body?" And Pybok's like, "Yeah, whatever." Takes the body out. The body starts smoking, and then out pops new Drax like a butterfly from a cocoon from his old body, and with his mind intact. And he has a little disorientation. He's still Arthur Douglas, mind you, in a sense, but because that also gets told. But apparently, because of what Pybok told this Cammy chick, Cammy believes that she owns Drax because she doesn't have a life and she's trying to get away from this place. And she's like, "Well, just take me with you wherever. I don't care. And you owe me. I own you. You owe me. This kind of stuff." So Drax takes down the Blood Brothers. Basically deals with Pybok. And they have a fight, but then it was like, okay, you know what? We just want to get off this mud ball, so let's work together. Pybok had this emergency beacon on his person that he calls, and a prison ship comes for them at the end of the series, and they all get whisked away to Prologue, Annihilation Prologue.
Right. So what we have is, and I want to note that, the reason why they have this minus and plus day thing is that it's very much a way to help readers keep track of where we are in relation to the one big event called Annihilation Day. It's also meant to evoke some historical, at least evoke a context of historical background when it comes to how people keep journals. Think about what people are doing with the current quarantine. Day 25 of their personal quarantine and whatnot. So,
yeah. So this is something we've seen in other comic book events also, notably like 52 and some other places. But well, maybe not 52, but regardless, in other places.
Right. So,
Ultimatum. Yeah.
What's that?
Ultimatum. I think they had a similar ultimatum plus this or plus that minus that kind of situation going on.
All right. Well,
Anyway,
so in the lead up to Annihilation Day, we have a short bit where Thanos, who is not the powerhouse character that we are familiar with, he's not the character that we last that we remember from the Infinity Gauntlet series, but he's still clever, smart, sneaky, and scheming. So he arrives at the kiln and retrieves this character named Screet and the Fallen One, convincing the Fallen One to serve him. He then waits nearby with Death, who informs him that someone who serves her even better than Thanos will arrive soon. And we get to Annihilation Day.
Yeah, so the Annihilation Wave hits, which is day zero. People at the Crunch die, and there was some folk begging for us, trying to do a prayer while this is happening. Cut to 4 days later, a day. I'm just going to start calling it a day plus whatever number. A day plus 4. The Nova Corps assembled on Xandar. It just so happens at the same time Drax and Cammy end up on Xandar because from the prison ship that they were on. But they get let go because of a technicality, aka the DNA scanner couldn't recognize that this Drax is the same Drax that was previously on a tear all over the galaxy. So they had to let him go because they didn't know if it was actually him or not. But they were watching him. The Annihilation Wave hits Xandar as the Nova Corps was being led abreast to what's going on in other places because of the Annihilation Wave, and Richard Rider, um, basically tries to help fight everything else, but he ends up being the last one alive. He is definitely the last Nova Corps alive, but at the time he thinks he's the last person on Xandar to be alive. But we find out in the next miniseries that is not the case.
Right. So we have crossed over from the Drax miniseries into the Nova miniseries in terms of the reading order. Mm-hmm. So,
but we're going to continue with Prologue until because there is still a couple of things that still kind of come out, and then we'll go into the Nova one.
Exactly. Let's see. All right. So we already mentioned that the Corps was slaughtered. Mm-hmm. So what happens is that Richard Rider searches for other Corps survivors, but only discovers the World Mind. So what the World Mind is very similar to the Kree Supreme Intelligence in that it contains the entirety of the Xandar culture. But what it also contains, unlike the Supreme Intelligence, is that it contains the entirety of the Nova Force, the power that in small doses powers the various members of the Nova Corps, the Nova Corpsmen, the Nova Centurions, and whatnot.
Think Green Lantern power battery.
Right. And essentially, Worldmind asks Richard Rider to take on the burden of personally storing the entirety of the Nova Force and the Worldmind within his body. And it turns out to be a huge burden to bear that takes Richard several issues to really get a hold of.
Yeah, he basically gets shook because of the fact that his first use of the power was a little bit too much, and he was losing control, and he was scared because of that, which kind of comes out during the course of.
Well, he kind of pulls a Captain Marvel on several ships. Yes. When I say Captain Marvel, I'm referring to the MCU Captain Marvel,
which she's also done in books at various times. But yeah, you're absolutely right. She basically just plows through a whole bunch. I mean, he basically plows through a whole bunch of ships. Just all willing in it, which is not the first time this happens during the course of this event.
Right. I mean, he's literally killing. Obviously, these are bugs from the negative zone. But if you think about, maybe not several Death Stars, but we're talking about a couple of major capital ships getting wiped out. All in one fell swoop.
It's funny you should mention that because there is definitely a Star Wars parallel that happens during the course of a couple of these things, even
of course.
Star Trek. I mean, excuse me, even Battlestar Galactica. But if you've noticed that,
well, that I don't notice because I am not familiar at all with Battlestar Galactica.
Oh yes, I think we'll get to that because I think I have it in my notes. So
okay.
So where are we? Oh yeah. So yeah, the core kids side they get killed. This happens. Nova runs across um, Drax and Cammy, who were still on Xandar, and they still happen to be alive because they were in an escape pod, but it ended up crashing back to the planet. They basically escape Xandar using Nova's newfound powers and abilities to be able to open up a Stargate. And they pop to somewhere different. Meanwhile, Ronan the Accuser gets arrested in Skrull Place and put on trial. As we find out, that is A Day plus 12. A Day plus 15, the Silver Surfer is in the Verge system, and he basically feels the A wave, the Annihilation wave coming. We also see the Super-Skrull on invisible in a Scree starbase, kind of skulking around there for some odd reason. Oh yeah, and Ronan's being court-martialed, by the way, so that's a whole that's thing to come into play later. Also, Annihilus appears in the Verge system somewhere else with his declaration that all is his and his will is all, basically. And I believe that is when we go into the Nova miniseries.
Well, I was about to say, a lot of this stuff happens parallel to each other. It's not necessarily sequential.
Right.
So, I'm going off of our cliff notes.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, see, yeah, and this the Cliff Notes walkthrough kind of goes. So this is going into Silver Surfer. So you know what? Let's just go with that because realistically, because it kind of makes sense. I mean, I think the time frame of the Silver Surfer is kind of slightly. It is definitely parallel to what's going on in Nova, but it is what it is. But Nova, as far as the Annihilation time frame is kind of whatever it is. So, let me see. Bear with us, folks. Sorry about this. We had to run an audible at the last minute also from some of this, so it's a little skewed. So Silver Surfer arrives in Skrull territory, finds it decimated. Oh wait, let me back up a second. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was about to say, just bear in mind that most of the prologue stuff is actually pre-Annihilation Day 100. Right. So we can kind of go up to pretty much Annihilation Day plus 100, give or take. Right. Maybe a little bit more to like 180, but at the end of the day, the main events of the Annihilation miniseries start at 204.
Right.
So we can basically just kind of pick and choose some of the events to discuss.
So let me just go. Let me just go off of this thing. Let me see. Ronan gets taken to Kree Empire for court martial. Super-Skrull is in the thing like was said. Annihilus begins his attempts to take the power cosmic from sending his seekers, including their Levitor Ravenous. This is basically from the Silver Surfer mini, as we find out. So I'm kind of skipping around. After the Heralds of Galactus, so we also find out that Airwalker, who is a herald I didn't know that much about, is from Xandar, and that comes into play in a second because the Seekers and the Ravenous assault the android until the Silver Surfer arrives, defeating Ravenous and the Seekers, but failing to save Airwalker, and basically Airwalker tells the Silver Surfer that he must combat the wave. But in the course of this also happens that we find out that Annihilus is looking for the Herald so they can get more power. We find that's the power bar later, but we find out that the Annihilus is looking for and trying to capture the Herald of Galactus. This is why he was after Airwalker, who just happens to be on Xandar. And also, we find out that the reason why Xandar was attacked was because they were trying to bring Airwalker out so they could capture him. So the Nova Corps just happens to be collateral damage, basically.
Right.
Let's see. Terex the Tamer is captured by Analysis Seekers. And there's some other stuff that's kind of missing, that little points that I'll try to put in, but this is like the broad strokes. Silver Surfer arrives in Skrull territory, finds it decimated. However, one debris field, he finds a single survival, a Skrull named Tark Maru. He attempts to take Maru to safety. The Surfer is attacked by the Seekers. And then during the course of a battle between Silver Surfer and the Seekers, in which he finds out their weak link to the Seekers, because basically the Seekers are Analysis huntsmen, and they're the ones that are going out. They're like there's a mutant mutant parallel I'm trying to think of, and I'm not sure. But they have themselves a set of what almost looks like werewolves, and they are bound to those by the power cosmic. And the Silver Surfer found out that you break that link to these werewolves slash things, and their owners, then they're easier to manage. Basically, they can get easily taken out. But Firelord and Redshift, which is another herald that I didn't know anything about, end up coming during the course of the battle, and happen upon this information that the Surfer so generously provided them. They turn the tide, and they all decide to team up. Thanos finally meets Annihilus, creating an alliance, which brings us to Annihilation Day plus 20, where we find out Tenebrous and Aegeus, two primordial gods, were in the kiln, which was the first thing destroyed.
Right.
But because of the Annihilation Wave, they've been released. And they have a vendetta against Galactus, who I guess is also amongst. I don't know if he's a primordial god, but he was basically one of the three that of the same type of celestial beings. Let's just say. But they prepare to seek their vengeance against Galactus. The two discover the Fallen One, retrieving the Maker's body. Weird note here that when Thanos sent the Fallen One to look for, he sent the Fallen One to look for the Beyonder's essence, and yes, it is as far as I know, it is that Beyonder from the Secret Wars.
Mm-hmm.
But he made it sound like he was looking for this Aegis person, so just putting that in there. Anyway, retrieves the Maker's body, sensing that the power of Galactus on the Fallen One. Aegis and Tenebrous begin to interrogate them. Silver Surfer, Redshift, and Firelord find a refugee fleet and put Tark Maru on it for safety. Stardust, the then current herald of Galactus, comes seeking the Silver Surfer because Galactus basically requests the services of the Silver Surfer. At the same time, I guess this lets Stardust out of his heralding duties, from what we come to find out during the conversation between Surfer and Galactus. But anyway, Stardust remains with the other heralds to assist in their assaults against the Wave. Annihilus informs Thanos of his attempts to gain the power cosmic, which is being called cosmic power throughout this whole thing for some reason. In the comic book, rather. Failing to gain it before the death of Morg, Thanos, curious as to what Annihilus is doing, agrees to assist him. Which leads us to A Day plus 21.
Right. So Galactus tells the Surfer that Aegis and Tenebrous are a big deal, and asks the Surfer to again become his herald. The Surfer actually agrees, and Galactus imbues him with the extra power that his current heralds wield. So Ravenous and the Seekers attack. The Surfer devastates the Seekers and sends Ravenous back to Annihilus, demanding they return to the negative zone. So he cleans up right there.
Yeah, it was good.
Right.
It's basically like
Meanwhile,
when
go ahead.
Sorry, when Goku just picture when Goku turns Super Saiyan for the first time and just destroys or actually more parallel to Gohan when he turns Super Saiyan for the it just decimates all of Cell's little creatures. It's that badass. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
I was about to say. Meanwhile, we step back into the Ronan miniseries, and we find that Ronan has been convicted of treason after testimony from Tana Nile, quote unquote, reveals that Ronan has been in contact with a member of the Skrull Empire, Baroness Sabak. As punishment, Ronan is stripped of his accuser title. We move forward to Annihilation Day plus 40, where Thanos meets Aegis and Tenebris, agreeing to help them find Galactus and enact their revenge.
Yeah, this is back in Silver Surfer.
Right. All right. So we have the next day, an Annihilation Wave fleet led by Admiral Sallow attacks the Skrull world Axlo. Despite being led by the Super-Skrull, the Skrull army station there is destroyed after the arrival of the Harvester of Sorrow. Okay.
Yeah, this is when we start getting into the Super-Skrull Annihilation Super-Skrull miniseries.
Got it. This is all stuff I haven't read. Yeah. I'll be honest.
Yeah, that's why I was trying to. I don't know. At some point, it was like we could have gone mini by mini, but it's probably better to go this way, just chronologically. It's and I'll just point out when things happen.
Right.
So Super-Skrull seeks the aid from Baroness Sabak in attacking and destroying the Harvester, fearing that the weapon might be used against the planet Zaragna. And actually, weirdly enough, I would say read the Silver Surfer miniseries because it's actually pretty interesting, even though it's probably the least there's a couple of things in there that plays out for the bigger picture of Annihilation, but mostly for the most part is pretty much Super-Skrull's, how he gets involved and his own little thing. Anyway, so fearing that the weapon might be used on the planet Zagarzna, where his son Sarnog lives, Sabak refuses. Desperate to stop the Harvester, the Super-Skrull turns on his fellows, stealing an escape ship and being joined by a seemingly kid Skrull mechanic named Arkin, a young Skrull whose father served under the Super-Skrull, and we will find out a little bit more about that later. Super-Skrull and Arkin go to the planet Earth, convincing Reed Richards to send him to the negative zone so they can find out more information on the Harvester. Again, this is still the Super-Skrull miniseries. Super-Skrull and Arkin capture a negative zone vessel. Super-Skrull discovers members of the Annihilation Wave, destroying an army and interrogating the last surviving member, then killing him when he learns who created the Harvester, a high-ranking Wave scientist named Hawal. Super-Skrull and Arkin arrive on the prison planet UX-73, where prisoners of the Wave are used as slave labor, and the scientists of the Wave develop new means of destruction. Super-Skrull slaughters the forces of the prison and convinces the inmates to join him in destroying the Harvester. He also discovers Hawal, who he forces into developing a means to destroy the Harvester. Arkin begins developing a portal that Super-Skrull's forces can use to return to the positive matter universe, that thanks to Reed Richards, who gave them that. Hawal finishes the weapon needed to destroy the Harvester. Super-Skrull then kills him. And actually, this was not before Hawal was like, I don't have any reason to help you because, after I finish this, you're going to kill me anyway. So what's the point of me even doing the work? And Super-Skrull just so happens to find some invention that Hawal did to, let's say, coerce him into doing making said counter weapon. Super-Skrull reveals his fears concerning his son to Praxagora, who's one of the inmates who become one of his lieutenants, and also ends up falling in love with them. Side note. The Super-Skrull forces return to the positive matter in the universe and begin their assault on the Harvester, but are betrayed by Arkin, and the Super-Skrull's forces are captured. Admiral Sallow forces the Super-Skrull to watch as the Harvester destroys Zaragna. So yeah, all that work went for basically nothing. Needless to say, Super-Skrull is kind of pissed. Arcane reveals that he betrayed the Super-Skrull because he holds him responsible for his father's death. Super-Skrull hypnotizes Arcane into forcing him to release the Super-Skrull and the rest of the folks. Arcane then breaks out and flees. And Praxagora and Preek, which is the other lieutenant he has, who's basically akin to an alien version of, let's say, Madrox. So if you hit him, he'll multiply. Which came in handy when they were trying to build their fleet to do this to do this thing. Anyway, they're like, okay, look, you go. We'll hold off the wave troops, and we'll sacrifice ourselves so that you can get away. Super-Skrull does that, but then he has a kind of a slight change when he talks to Arcane and finds out, find out what's what. Praxagora and the Super-Skrull being back up. Super-Skrull chases after Arcane, catching up to him and ripping off his limbs, leaving him to die, which was a funny moment. Meanwhile, Preek is killed by the Wave's forces, and Praxagora readies to overload her internal process, and all the while she's doing internal monologuing this whole thing. Attempting to turn herself into a living bomb because she's an android. She comes from a race of living androids. Because that's something you don't necessarily come out with these notes. But before she can destroy herself, Super-Skrull arrives, absorbing her powers and destroying the Harvester himself, and also kissing her in the process. After destruction, Praxagora retrieves the inert body of the Super-Skrull. The Annihilation wave has destroyed the majority of the Skrull Empire and its citizens, and his citizens are slaughtered. So yeah, this is what we see. What happens to the Skrull Empire, and the Skrull Empire. And I'm trying to remember if that was actually because basically after they save the Harvester, it cuts to like years in the future. So that's what ends Super-Skrull's miniseries. So this next thing about the Skrull Empire being decimated comes from somewhere else that I can't remember. Anyway, next up.
All right, so we jump to, I guess, to many of the events in the Ronan miniseries. Ronan passes judgment on the Kree world Bwak, despite no longer having his accuser title. Ronan then learns from Tulik ul Zin that Tana Nile is on the world Gothab Omega. Ronan arrives on Gothab Omega a little while later, discovering his old ally Korath, who among the residents.
I was happy you did that, because yes.
So almost immediately, the two are engaged in a brief battle with Stellaris and Nebula. That was pretty wild to see Nebula just kind of come out of nowhere in this issue.
Oh, and it gets better.
Who they discover are members of Gamora's Graces. Gamora's Graces have other warriors from across the universe revealed to have mysteriously gathered there, including Cerise, a Shi'ar warrior who we last saw in the pages of the X books, I believe.
Okay.
Excalibur.
Probably.
I want to say.
I was wondering where that came. I didn't do the legwork for that one, but I was wondering where that one came from. But it's also noticed while we're here real quick. This is not the Gamora you know from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, or even the current version of Guardians of the Galaxy, the book. I mean, it is, but it isn't. It's basically old school Gamora when she had the bikini on and the cloak,
right?
So that is a thing that is worth noting in going into this, and a couple of other characters that we will run across are vastly different from where they are right now for the time being.
This is what I was going to say. This is the start of the journey for several characters.
So continue.
All right. Where are we now? Ronan has discovered his old ally. Let's see here. As one of Annihilus's Queens, Roddykat leads an assault on the Kree Empire. Ronan and Gamora meet in battle. Soon after, the wave arrives and it's discovered that cosmic being Glorian has been shaping the world. This is one of those shaper of worlds things. The forces on Godthab Omega overcome the influence of Glorian and band together to defend themselves against the wave. Glorian eventually uses his power to destroy the wave, but his mind snaps. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Ronan finally finds Tana Nile, who was mortally wounded in the assault. Before dying, she informs him that the House Fierro, the leading power in the Kree Empire, were behind her testimony. They're a bunch of dirty bastards. Ronan and Gamora then work together to get the survivors off planet and warn the Kree of the wave's arrival.
Yep. And that was all during the course of Ronan's miniseries. So we cut to I believe this is from. Oh wait, no, we need to stop.
Stop. Wait a minute.
Because this is starting to go into actual.
Is this prologue?
No, this is actually. I want to say this is during the course. No, this is. I believe during the course of. Well, we don't stop, but this is we're gonna go around it because I believe that the whole thing with Phyla and Moondragon happens in actual Annihilation.
Oh, okay.
Yes, if I remember, because I was reading that and I was like, wait, what? Hold up.
Right. I was about to say we're right on the cusp of Annihilation Day when we're talking about the major offensive, and that is the beginning of the actual miniseries proper. So we've actually gone through the majority of the events in the prologue miniseries.
Yes, there's a couple of things that we can go backtrack around to.
Sure.
Because like I said, the majority of what we're going through is Silver Surfers and Ronans. There is a little bit from Novas that I guess we can kind of talk about because so going back to the Nova miniseries, which is kind of going around something around here. I think we already talked about how they escaped to someplace else. No, we didn't actually. So Nova basically we got to the point where Nova downloaded the world mounted into his helmet and got a power boost from it. Then we talked about all of that and him meeting up Drax and Cammy. Cool. They all escaped Xandar thanks to Nova and with a little help from Drax, threatening to kill him, to Nikos Aristides, I guess that is called. They meet up with Quasar, who's trying to evacuate the Iconians and ask for Nova's help. And he's a little sheepish about it because he's still kind of scared about his powers. But Drax kind of comes in and is like, "Look, this is why he doesn't want to do it." He talks about the whole power thing and he's scared and he lost control of this and the other. But Nova finally decides to want to help, or gets guilted into helping. One of the two, take your pick. But yeah, and we also find out why Drax and Cammy are staying close to Nova because of his big power set. As Drax said, he's the safest. He is close to the safe way to be near someone with that big of a power set in times like this. So, and we also find out that Drax has another ulterior motive for this that we come to find out in, I think, later on in this series, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But I'll just go ahead and say it, is that if you know anything about Drax the Destroyer, he's single-minded in his goal, and that goal is going after Thanos, which we already know is around. So we come to find out that he's trying to get back to kill Thanos.
Right.
Anyway, let's see. Quasar and Nova.
No, I was about to say, just you got to go. We actually, in terms of the sequence here, we have to go back. We kind of glossed over this happening,
right?
Because Annihilus has always been a formidable opponent, but becomes more so because of several things that he does during this miniseries that really boosts his deadliness, and the wave is basically held at a standstill by Quasar and Nova, but when they go after Annihilus, it's actually at Annihilus's bidding. He's actually setting a trap because he sensed that there was great power. And they actually make a Spider-Man reference here.
Oh, yes, I do. I remember that. Yeah.
So, he senses the great power that Richard Rider is wielding because of his possession of the entirety of the Nova Force. So he's actually going after Richard Rider's gravimetric powers, but
and Quasar's to a lesser degree, but yes.
Exactly. I think his main goal is Nova's powers, but as the two of them, Nova and Quasar, are trying to tag team against Annihilus. Annihilus basically incapacitates Nova, and some ill stuff happens to Quasar.
Yeah, he did. Quasar did.
Yeah, ill stuff.
Yeah.
He actually, using the cosmic control rod, which is one of the more powerful artifacts in the Marvel Cosmic Universe, uses that to basically withdraw the entirety of the force that's part of the quantum bands, and basically sucks the life out of Quasar.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that happens, and the same thing almost happens to Nova, except for he comes up with a plan to let himself one, he's fighting Annihilus, but he comes up with a plan to basically let him capture him, and when he does capture him, uses the world mind to basically hack his fleet, hack the Annihilation wave, and get them to fight each other. He doesn't fully does that, but he does some considerable damage, which causes Annihilus to withdraw, and to also detonate that part of the fleet that got taken over because he couldn't regain control of them.
Right. One of the cool things that comes in this exchange, or at least in the aftermath of this exchange, is that Annihilus says, "I will not be tricked like that again." Mm-hmm. And I love, what's great about this particular event. And I have to admit that when I was initially collecting this, I did not collect all of the lead-ins, all of the tie-in miniseries. All I collected when this was coming out in real time was the Annihilation Prologue, the Nova books, and the Silver Surfer books. And I do not have all of the Silver Surfer books. I know this because it's one of those. I think one of the issues is on my list of things to pick up at some point at a con. Mm-hmm. So this entire discussion, the discussion tonight has been very informative to me. I did not have, as Roddykat mentioned, we kind of called an audible to split the discussion of this event into 2 episodes. The prologue would be tonight, and the miniseries proper and the epilogue would come next week. So I'm a little underprepared, and I sincerely apologize to our fans, our listeners, and our viewers, but I definitely appreciate being able to go through this and seeing how the groundwork for the miniseries is laid out in all of these books. And as we mentioned earlier, so many of the character developments that we have basically taken for granted now happen right here. So I'm actually going to endeavor to read these over the weekend just to get a better sense of the magnitude of this event. It's really, I was basically surprised that there were that many miniseries. Like I said, I knew of Nova and Surfer. Those are the ones I plunked money down for. I just didn't pick up all the other ones. Right. So it's really enlightening. Shout out to Marvel Unlimited, like we always say. Shout out to Marvel Unlimited for allowing us to go through this event and read up on some of the things that we didn't pick up, or at least I didn't pick up the first time around.
Right, and I took it upon myself like earlier in the week. It was like because I started reading Annihilation, the first issue of Annihilation, after reading Drax, because I knew I had written Drax like I said before, and I knew it falls into this series. But again, it doesn't. If you look it up on like Marvel Unlimited or even Well, if you look at them on Marvel Unlimited, it doesn't come up as being a part of Annihilation because it pretty much starts right before. It basically leads into the prologue, like we said earlier. So, but it is a part of it because you get to that, the character development of him, and you see how he ends up getting into Prologue. And that was the good reason why I took it from there and be like, well, I'm gonna read Prologue because we weren't going to do that anyway because it was one thing. But that's where everything starts jumping off, and that's where everything starts tagging the other miniseries at the same time. And unfortunately, the ways this event is kind of structured, you know, they slightly intertwine with each other, but there is enough of a sequential order to where you can there's a significant order that you can kind of get to and get stuff out of, which you kind of have to, because if you read Annihilation issue 1 by itself, there is a page recap, just like a lot of comic books do, but some of the stuff is kind of pertinent from the miniseries, like the whole thing you find out. Yeah, like the whole thing you find out in Silver Surfer as to what Annihilus wants with the Heralds of Galactus, and even like what happened here in Nova, the last issue of the Nova series, which is pretty much a part of that.
Because I mean, take it from me as someone who read this in real time. You could probably get away with reading the prologue book,
yes,
and have that as your lead into the event proper, and you'll get a general idea, a pretty good general idea of the broad strokes of what's going on and who the players are and what their motivations are. But I definitely agree with Roddy in that there is a lot more to be read. There's a lot more to the story outside of what's in the prologue book, because we are immediately jump in with a modified Drax and Cammy, as he's being scanned and being identified as not being exactly the Drax that we knew. So it's definitely beneficial to go back and read these tie-in books, as much as maybe as comic book collectors and fans of the medium, we're not so keen on having to read all of the tie-ins. I think this particular event, because these are precursor stories to the event, really do have an impact, as opposed to being kind of tangential tie-ins the way a lot of books can be during the course of comic book events. So these are much more foundational books as opposed to tangential tie-ins.
Right, and even with the Super-Skrull miniseries, which arguably is probably the most tangential of between this one and Ronan are the most tangential ones, but they still tie in some relatively significant ways at points.
Right.
You still get stuff out of them, so therefore, like I said, yeah, you can go out without taking those in, but at the same time, there's a point or two in there that kind of helps going into Annihilation proper.
Right. And as I mentioned, I think it's more helpful, far more helpful than the tie-ins that we decry as just being a cash grab.
Yeah.
These are definitely not cash grabs. These are, for the most part, parts of the foundation of the story.
Right. And also, so there are, I guess if you count the prologue, there are, and the prologue is a one shot. So there are 4 miniseries. Well, technically, in all, there are 5 miniseries, but one we will talk about, and we will talk about next week because that's an aftermath thing. But the 4 that we've talked about now are like 4 issues apiece. They're fairly easily reads. Like, well, it's particularly the Drax one. Actually, excuse me, 5 with the Drax one. Sorry, so it's actually, so add one more to that account. But I will put a link to the Annihilation reading order in the show notes, so just in case anybody wants to partake of that after this discussion. And I guess we could before, and it's well, 2 things. One, it's kind of hard to do a click of the week for any of these because it's like there's so many moving parts and so many things. So we,
right.
If there's a book in the issue that stands out to you, then you can kind of call it out if you can think of it.
No, I was about to say, I think I'm just a little bit underprepared for this particular show, for this particular review, because I just haven't been able to read all of these prologue books. But I can say that, as I said before, this is definitely one of those events where these prologue books are probably, more important than not.
Right.
And listen, there's a reason why, even though I never read these prologue books, I've always been a big fan of this miniseries. I've always been a big fan of this event because of the way it's told. Shout out to Keith Giffen, by the way.
Yes, and that's what thing I was going to get to next. Yeah, the creators.
Who is the architect of this story and really does a number on several characters and really sets the stage for, I hate to say this, the MCU as we know it today.
Yeah.
Never mind the cosmic characters in the Marvel universe, because this definitely gets the ball rolling on these Annihilation style events. The success of this event, and we'll talk more about this next week after we talk about the event proper and its epilogue. The success of this event spawned several spin-offs of varying quality, but the Annihilation Conquest, the one that comes right after this, is just as good, and literally spawns a team that we still know today.
Right, a version of the team that we definitely know, that we have talked about during the course of this event today.
Exactly.
With some significantly changed characters from this event. So.
Right.
What else was I going to say? I can't remember. But so we're pretty much at the end of this this thing tonight, and we will reconvene this tomorrow. There was something else about this event that I was going to say, because I feel like we might have missed something, but if we can probably go into it next week if it happens to come into play. As a matter of fact, we probably will.
It probably will, because we're going into the event proper, and we're going into the teeth of the war.
Mm-hmm.
The teeth of the battle, and it honestly, the epic scale of this event is probably what drew me in, and that's why I have such fond memories of it. It's really, really something that, you kind of imagine the Kree-Skrull War to be like.
Mm-hmm.
And when we actually read the Kree-Skrull War, it's like, wait, it's not like this. This is, this is Marvel spacefaring at its finest.
Which is actually funny you mentioned the Kree-Skrull War, because Quasar actually says something. It was like, hey, do you remember the Kree-Skrull War? Didn't anybody learn anything from that? But this was not knowing what everything was going on in this particular one, but still yet when he said it was a thing. So yeah, I do have a couple of notes here that I want to kind of briefly go through. That was some interesting highlights that I thought about. So in the Silver Surfer miniseries, as I alluded to earlier, there was a couple of Star Wars references, or there was a Star Wars references, because when Thanos meets up with Annihilus in Annihilus' throne room, if you look at a one panel, it looks like the Emperor Palpatine's throne room, like directly. Like you see the chair right there in front of the window and the consoles that's right there, dead on. And then I want to say, is it later on in that? Yeah, it's later on in that miniseries, which might have been like issue 3 or 4. We see in a bunch of the refugee ships, one of them looks like the Battlestar Galactica, the quote unquote the new version of Battlestar Galactica, because I believe that show was actually going on at the time. But the newer version of Battlestar Galactica and another Star Wars type ship was in there, which I can't recall, but I know it is a Star Wars looking ship that was in the refugee ships. So that was an amusing thing. Oh, also we actually forgot, we did talk about the fact that Galactus gets caught up because, or did we talk about that actually?
Not yet. It actually doesn't happen here. It happens in the event proper.
Wait, I thought it does, because I thought it happens at the end of Silver Surfer. See, this is when, yeah. Maybe you're right, because we definitely do. They definitely do talk about it at the in the event proper. No, wait, no. I think. Hang on for a second. No, you're right. You're right. Because I remember in the beginning of Annihilation issue 1, Quill and Nova are talking to, I think, the one of Analysis people that they caught from the miniseries. From the from Nova Super miniseries, and they basically and talk about the fact that Galactus got captured. But in Silver Surfer, I think we start to see how did we get to that point. But I thought it was the Silver Surfer series is where he does get caught, at least at the end of it. But I don't think that's the case. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it. Like all of the final points we've done, little things. We know Korath is still around. We know Gamora, old school Gamora, is still kicking around, and we're going to get into next week Annihilation #1 and go through.
It happens in Annihilation #1. It does happen in Annihilation #1.
That's
just scrolling through it right now.
Right. Okay.
But the lead up to it is what you were referring to.
Right, in Silver Surfer's miniseries. So yeah, got it. So yeah, so you can see all the parts the plate starts spinning and other stuff, and kind of like I said, if you did not have that information going into Annihilation #1, you're gonna be like, how in the world did this happen, and where did he even come in? So it's worth reading the prologue stuff. That being said, I guess we can get to our last ad read of the night, unless you got something else.
No, I'm good. Okay. So last ad read of the night is for Amazon, because it's time to go to bed. Visit cspn.us, then click the Keep Our Podcast Free link at the top of the page. From there, scroll down and click on the Amazon link to shop. Purchase items from Amazon as you normally would, whether it's books, music, electronics, jewelry, apparel, bookcases, etc., etc. For every purchase made on Amazon through our link, Amazon sends the CSPN a payment that helps us keep the Comic Book Chronicles podcast free for our listeners at no extra cost to you. Amazon.com through CSPN.us. Do it today. Ka-ching!
And as we round the corner to another exciting episode of the Comic Book Chronicles, let me put the shot back up. I'd like to thank you all for coming out. We appreciate you. Be back here next week for when we talk about the core Annihilation series and the fallout from that. I have been Roddykat. You can find me at Roddykat on Twitter. You can also find me at NewsNerdsNeed on Twitter. You can also find me at CBCaps on Instagram.
Ka-ching!
Agent_70 on Twitter and Instagram.
Ka-ching!
PCN_dirt on Twitter. PopCultureNet on Twitter. PopCultureNetwork.com. And Byte, the Vine replacement, under the term comic reviews, no vowels.
Ka-ching!
Tim, DOGG98 on Twitter. CB Cron on Twitter, which is the Comic Book Chronicles accounts. Send us tell us how you like this or not, or if you do like this, you know what I'm saying? The Click Nation on Twitter, theclicknation.com. That's DKLIQNATION. And also, Comic Book Resources, where he's over there writing his face off.
Ka-ching!
You can find this here podcast on the Coastal of the Podcast Network. That's CSPN.us.
Do it today.
You can also find this here at your podcast perusal place of choice, whether it be Google Play, Apple iTunes, Spotify, and the Coastal of the Podcast Network's SoundCloud page. A big shout out to whoever sent me the popcorn maker and the popcorn therein. I think I know who you are. I need to confirm that, but thank you, just in case you watch this, if you happen to be in that number, because there's only a very limited number of people who would have the resources to do said thing.
Okay.
But I appreciate it very much, and it will be getting used as soon as I find space for it. That being said, folks, this has been the Comic Book Chronicles. Peace.
Peace. One.
I also love it when I'm playing.
Good evening,